So what I like to do before any interview, I like to just take a moment and close my eyes and do like just to breathe. You guys can join me if you want. I'm gonna do it. All right. Okay. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Michael Todoran, and this is what are we?
The Landscape Architect Podcast
Network.
Yes.
That was really good. So we've been saying it all weekend in our minds.
Yeah.
We're like, this is what we want it to be.
So I'm just gonna go down from this direction, and can you just like briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Patty. I'm part of the Green Side podcast. I'm the editor and the co-host of all of these side talks. That's me.
I'm Kacey. I'm with the Green Side podcast. I am the creative director.
Oh, yeah. I'm Graciela, and I am with the Green Side podcast, and I am the host and creator of the podcast.
And I'm Divine, host, producer of the Design Unmuted podcast, and what else? Yeah, I do everything behind the scenes.
And hi, my name is Maci Nelson. I am the creator and host of the Landscape Nerd podcast, and yeah, I do it all, so yeah, same.
All right, so I think this is going to be a little bit of a free-form discussion. We were getting pretty lit in here. I hope we can bring back that energy. Maybe I should, instead of breathing, maybe I should have done like jumping jacks or something.
Oh, yeah. A quick cha-cha slide.
Yeah. I think a little bit of a reel-in, because I think we're going to quickly get back up there. Not a problem.
So here, let's start. We'll just jump off, and then we'll just take it organically from wherever it goes from there. But what has your been experience of ASLA so far? And then whoever wants to go.
Do you want to go in order or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can, but then eventually we'll just.
So I definitely feel like it's a little bit of like you're so excited and you're into everything. And then by day 2 and 3, it's survival mode, and you're forcing yourself to really figure out what you care about. Because at first, you get here and you're like, I care about everything. It's all so cool. And then you're like, nope, I apparently only care about going to 1 or 2 sessions and then walking around and talking to people. And I think that's good to know, which is why it's great to have it every year. But as a first time, you're like, okay, you really understand you can't do it all.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah. No, I feel the same way. I'm like completely overwhelmed. It's good, but it's a lot, and very conflicted on the fact that I'm in this amazing city. I'm sitting here, and it's like I came here for this, and I definitely want to see it. But then there's all these museums, all these parks. Like unfortunately,
TBH. I'll be honest.
We already knew.
I'm basically we already knew.
It's all right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to be outside, so it's a difficult balance to strike.
Yeah, I agree. Last night I went to, my friend produced a movie about Bruce Lee and hip hop.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, oh, I'm out. And I went there, and it was an outdoor event, and they had DJs, and they had food, and the whole Bruce Lee museum, and hip hop, and freestylers, and I was like, yeah, this is.
Yeah, but Michael, what happened to the network communication?
Yeah. What happened to the mass invite?
Invite,
Wow.
Well, we got it on record now, so we're gonna be like, don't repeat your mistakes.
You asked one.
But I understand your sentiment about being in such a magical place.
Yeah, that's a good point. I remember last year it was like when I came here all by myself, and this was before Kacey and Patty came on. Actually, I think Patty was on, and we weren't able to come. It was like 2 last minute or something. So I came with the intention of like, I like to be prepared. I'm not a perfectionist, but I like to be prepared. So especially when it came to something like this, like national event. And the Nashville one, I had a friend who lived close to Nashville, but was 30 minutes away. And I didn't realize that until I had signed up for it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do that. And then I had my equipment. I had my 30-minute, commute every morning in Nashville. Nobody here. Like, it was terrifying. I had gone to the UPS that day of the first day of the conference to get my media kit printed out, to get my business cards printed out. My business cards were wrong. And then, like, it was, from day one, it was like hustle. And I went with this, like, I kid you not, guys, it was like a 20-pound backpack. It was horrible. And I didn't realize that I could actually talk to the PR people to have interviews set up. I didn't, like, register that. So I was, like, running around trying to go to, like, sessions and then trying to go to the expo hall and get myself out there, like, get the name out there. And it was just, like, constantly running back. I didn't even talk to the students, which is what our podcast was about. Right. Like, I was just, the whole day I was exhausted. Exhausted. And I was like, I'm never doing this again. and then now, like, having Kacey and Patty with me, it's like, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because it just makes, like, that conflict we always talk about. But I think for us, like, our experience so far has actually, when we recapped it all, it's actually been really good because we've been able to go to a couple of sessions and then create relationships with people and then revisit people that we interviewed before. And then then let them know, like, thank you for doing that. Like, thanks so much. Like, I gave a tote bag to somebody and then, like, had a selfie with them, and it's just cool having that, like, you know, reconnection again. Yeah. So I think it's been good overall. There were some things that we missed out or that we wish we had done, but that's what next year's for, you know. So I think it was good overall. This year, first time, right? This year, y'all's first time. Yeah.
And I mean, I've been to, like, the Florida ASLA, and it obviously doesn't compare in scale and, like, as impressive of sessions. Like, a lot of the sessions were very, okay, this is residential garden. You know, it was just very, like, practical and not so much like, whoa, landscape architecture and, like, all these cool new theoretical things happening. So this was, of course, it's in San Francisco. So I was like, yeah, I'll go. Sign me up. I don't care. I don't care if it's just like the Florida one. I'll be there. But it really is so impressive, like, the sessions that they have and the things they're offering. But at the same time, it is hectic and it's overwhelming. And me being in an expo realm or, like, environment, I can't function. I'm just like, this is too much. There's too many people. Yeah, everyone's, like, talking about kind of the same thing, and I'm like, no, I can't keep doing this. But yeah, I agree. Like, having the support of two other people that are also overwhelmed of being like, yeah, no, we can leave. Like, so it's good. And then also being like, okay, no, we can handle it. Like, let's talk a little more to people and, you know, find that balance without it being like, okay, we have to be here. We have to do this. Like, taking out the stress of it, I think, has been, like, a good thing for us.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, I think even over breakfast this morning, we were talking about, like, how next time, we should have a better plan in terms of, like, what we should do. Because a lot of the time we're like, hey, we're here as press, but we're like, what are we supposed to do? Yeah. Like, the press pass gave us, you know, some extra access, like, to things like this. But it felt like maybe we had to do more. But
what's the exchange, right?
Right. Yeah. So I think that, but even just doing this stuff and, like, getting to talk about it and share has been, like, you know, I think it's a really nice thing that we're doing. And I think just having a plan is what we just learned a lot from this time. We just learned a lot about what to do next time. Because, again, it was my first time. Your first time? My first time. Our first time.
Ours too.
Yeah. First time.
Okay, first time.
So, you know, and I think we're still having a great time, but we're learning a lot about, you know, what this is supposed to be in some ways, or what we want it to be. You know?
What is, what's the biggest thing that you personally have gotten out of doing a podcast, and what do you think it is that your audience gets? Like, so what have you gotten, right? Either self-fulfillment, other than, like, debt and stress.
You're like, yeah, that's a tangible thing. That's
so accurate. Oh my God.
But what kind of fulfillment do you get? And I say that that first part kind of jokingly, but I do want to address and kind of, like, talk to our audience and, like, give them an opportunity. Like, if you are listening to us and you do like us, right, like, support is really important, and I think we are being recognized, right, but there's more recognition that needs to happen. Like, podcasts are actually part of the MLA, like, bibliography, like, critique, right? And I've been cited.
Nice.
Which is, like, really, it's like, what?
Yeah.
No, don't cite. Like, And so I'm really curious to hear like what it is that you've like what's something like deep and rich that you've gotten out of it, and then what do you want your audience to hear as more of like a conversation to them than them just being like a POV observer, right?
Yeah.
So does anyone want to start with that?
I would like to start.
Sure.
Yeah. Graciela is the one who founded the podcast, right? And I just kind of hopped into it. And I think seeing just seeing that this is something that's very possible. Like anyone could just start a podcast. And obviously people say that and you're like, oh, you're crazy. But no, like it's so, like it really is something that people can do. And it's such a cool resource to give to people also. And like, I kind of forget that I'm in a podcast. And when people find out, they talk about it like it's like the bee's knees. They're like, oh my God, no way. And I'm like, oh, right. Like that is a really cool thing that I do. And I kind of like, not that I don't see the value in it, but I forget that like it's kind of a novelty to a lot of people. But at the same time, it's like, it's really just putting yourself out there and just going for it. So I think that's a lesson in itself of being like, you could just do it. Like, just do it. Just try it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. I just think it's really cool.
What would you want your audience to understand? Like, I guess if you were to speak to your audience directly, is there anything that you would want to tell them?
Don't be afraid to try things. Like if something is calling to you, whether it's like a podcast or like making music or drawing or like anything that you see as like a side or a less or just something like weird and ambitious and you're like, oh, no one's going to care. You don't have to do it for other people. You know, you could just do it for yourself and the people will eventually come, you know, like build it and they will come type of thing. So,
I mean, if you think about it, like history has proven that like people that do things just for the love and the pure sake of art, in the long run always end up, right? Like punk and hip hop came out at the same time. Both of them had no rewards. Nobody wanted to hear this. Nobody wanted to hear that, right? On a like a mass scale.
Yeah,
and then look at it now, right? Like look at it like, hey, these are people who did something from their love. And I feel like we're all like doing just like, hey, we want to do this and like we love it and like maybe somehow there's like some kind of faith that it'll all pay off.
I wanted to share that I think for me what I got out of this was that, you know, before this, I also teach at FIU. I worked at a firm, but that became like when you leave like school and you join the field, you kind of lose the community in a way. You're suddenly just coworkers, you know, if you don't really go out of your way to make those relationships, you just have the 9 to 5. And you kind of forget all the nice and like joyful things that you learn about landscape architecture. So when I joined this team, which I was obviously the last one to join pretty recently, I think that getting the chance to sit with you guys, even before we record, we get to talk and just almost like a therapy session about like the field isn't exactly what we thought it would be, and we're all experiencing this at the same time. And it's a little bit uncomfortable when you're first getting into it. But nobody really talks about it. So I think it's also something that the audience gets is that you see like we're all new and it's like you have to kind of get comfortable or be uncomfortable for a little while. And then, you know, everyone's going to go through the same thing at some point until you feel more settled. And I think, you know, you also get like we got a community out of it of people that reach out to us. I enjoy this company. I'm having a great time.
So well said. I feel like you just dropped the mic.
Turn off the mic. Turn it off.
Don't. That's my mic.
Don't drop the mic.
Hold it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I love that. Yeah, and like to piggyback on them, I think collectively we really want to tell our audience that, because what I didn't realize when I had started the podcast was that I was basically just like the cry for help, you know, and like because when everything shut down, and it started there. Obviously, things have changed tremendously since then, but still, it affected such a big generation of landscape architect and landscape designers, because we had now to think about landscape design or landscape architecture in such a different lens, and then on top of that, like being so closed in, I just can't even believe that, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but I was like, I can't believe I gave myself this challenge. Like, this kind of challenge, I'm usually the type of person that I do not like, I care too much about what people think. I care too much about, you know, should I do this, should I not do this? And like Patty and Kacey, you know, I'm like, oh, should I, you know, like even today I was overthinking breakfast, you know, I was like, dang it, we should have got this. Oh man, they had sandwiches. I was like, dang it, she's like, and then always having Patty around is helpful because then she's like, don't overthink it, you know? What did she say this morning?
Don't dwell?
Yeah, no, she said, don't, she's like, yeah, but don't dwell on it. Wow. She's like, don't dwell. And I was like,
I know.
You all have one.
You're gonna get a text randomly and just be like, "This is my quandary. What do I do?" And you're
I'll be like, girl, you're good.
on the Zoom calls, I'm like, should I answer? Oh my god, that sounded so stupid. But she's just like, it doesn't matter. It's okay. You know what? If you don't want it, I'll cut it out for you. Bro. I was like, yes,
I love it.
And then you have Kacey, who's like the artistic brains of this thing, which I just feel like it's just crazy because what we're doing as a team is what we're trying to tell other people to do as individuals. Like, be okay with the fact that you like communications and go for it. Like, find something. That's the beauty of landscape architecture. Is it's just a web, and there's things that are feeding into it that make it what it is, or that could make it better. And we're trying to tell the audience, like even with the series that we have, like Unpaved, just go for it. Like, even if it's not landscape architecture, just go for it, because you don't know what the return could be. And 100%. That's what we're trying to tell people all the time, you know? And we've gained, like, not only community, we've gained friendship, we've gained all that, but then we've gained a lot of great skills from this, too. So, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, the skills part, 100% has been, like, a huge thing. And it's actually been so helpful in my job, because then I'm like, okay, well, let's do a community engagement video, and then we'll do and I'm like, okay, send me your voiceovers, and I can do the editing, and I can put it together like that. Nice. And I'm like, well, who was gonna do this?
Yeah.
If I wasn't like, if I hadn't spent sleepless nights on YouTube trying to find a function that was right there. The whole time. Oh no.
You're like, it's the record button.
The little red dot. But you know, never press the red button.
Oh yeah. You're like, so we're just gonna keep going.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, but like I think for me too, it's been like such a big skill building. And at a personal level, I mean, I love to talk. Like I can talk all day, especially if I'm talking to interesting people. So now I get to talk to all these people I admire, people who are doing great things. I'm like, honestly, at first I'm like, I don't even know who's listening, but if nobody's listening, I've actually gotten at a personal level a lot out of like the connection and the conversations, and I'm just hoping that somebody else will get the same value.
Yeah.
And then it's been great to like have people listen and tell me, oh, this is good, blah blah blah, and like it always those little messages always come at a point where I'm like, oh my god, I am so tired. I don't even know if nobody, like anyone is listening.
Oh my god,
I'm going in debt for this. Like I have to, like it's just like the things you were talking about, and then there's a message that comes like from somebody I don't even know, and like the people that I don't know is where it touches most, because like you know like sometimes it's like I don't know, it's like, hey, my name is this, I listened to this podcast, and then someone said, oh, you mentioned that you are trying to incorporate sound in landscape design, you should check this thing out, and I'm like, somebody took time to like listen and actually send me resources. Like, come on. You know, it's so, I was so touched, and it's like, just I'm like, okay, I'll keep going. No, but it's just been really good, even, and then at a professional level, I realize a lot of, the networking, even the students who are like, like the like citations thing, I'm like, okay, so I'm already somebody who loves to read and like consume knowledge, but I'm like, I now have a responsibility to actually be on point.
Wow.
Because
that's a good point.
It's like it's carrying influence. Like I can't go putting out stuff that are not factually correct or not well researched. But at the same time, learning in public is terrifying, because like you, I was like, oh man, like I want to come ready. But there's no coming ready because it's like, I'm
This
gonna mess up.
medium is really difficult because it's part organic and then part like journalist, and you have to like straddle that line depending on how you approach it.
Yeah.
We have different styles. Maci, what have you
Okay.
gotten out? I'm sorry, were you?
No, I'm out. Yeah, I was going.
I was like, oh God, I'm going last because I'm gonna try not to cry because this is very emotional for me because what I get out of it is like the acceptance of being neurodivergent because, you know, it's school systems, it's, you know, work, it's all that. Oh, so like neurotypical is, you could say, someone who can understand a lot of the societal cues and social norms and, you know, like with relative ease.
So you're neurodivergent.
I'm very neurodivergent, and like my entire life having these strong interests and then kind of being, you know, dissuaded or punished. You know, it's like, oh, good, you're smart, but I don't want you to be smart in that way. Is something I feel like I've been told my entire life, and so yeah, so that's why, like. Yeah. That's why I know. That's why
If y'all start crying,
I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's why we're here.
So then, you know, doing the podcast, I even started it off, and I've been very open about it. Like, I started off kind of anonymously because I was like, I don't know how people are really going to accept that I am so into, you know, landscape or this type of thing. Like, I think people are just going to think I'm so weird and not be receptive to it. So I was like, but as I got those emails, I got those messages of like, oh, this is so cool, I'm really glad, and people sending you resources, and I was like, oh, this can actually make me a better designer, and this is the proof because I'm able to like get these resources and implement them. So then I was able to really like connect with that part of myself that I had just put aside and had to mask it in a way of like digestible. So it's like I was really smart and really into something, but then I had to, instead of like completely nerding out about it, I had to turn it into a very beautiful project and like a very curated, you know, like paper or something, even though I could just have equally would have loved to just talk about it and educate in a way that people would actually understand it, not just in the like academic format. So podcasts gave me that freedom to talk to people and communicate in a way that I didn't know was possible. So like I found out that I'm really an educator, you know, like that's what I want to do, but I didn't think I could do it because the formats that I see before me are very strict or traditional that have not supported me in the past.
I love your podcast.
Oh,
like I'm a big fan. Like I'm a little jealous. It's like I like just as you lean into like what you're good at, I have to appreciate like, okay, there's things that I do. Right?
Yes.
But it's always like that, right? It's always like, oh, you see, and then now you have to step back and be like, okay, well, I'm doing something my style or whatever. But for you, I'm just gonna jock for you.
Yeah.
And what I really like is just like this narrative, like this sense of like when like you're in a garden and you're talking about it. And I remember, I even think I told you this on the side. I was like, oh, wait, she's not in there right now.
Like she's recording.
I was so in the garden. I was like, no. And I was like, wow. Like the fourth wall broke for a second, and then I was like, that's something special, right? And I think what's cool about that is like you don't have to be a landscape architect to like appreciate like what we do or listen, right? Because it's a voice and it's a human aspect to it, and we're talking about it, and it's so much more accessible than, I mean, nobody wants to hear like a PowerPoint presentation. I can't even.
Yeah, right.
And so like the accessibility, I think, is.
Yeah, that's the information becoming accessible, and I think when I was really getting into figuring out what podcasting was all about, I saw somebody that was like going, oh, I really want to cite your podcast, not to me, someone else. No, someone else. They're like, I want to cite your podcast. I want to cite this YouTube video, or like someone made a vlog or whatever. Like, how do I put that in an academic sense, right? Because we can't get rid of that. Like, that's super influential. And then someone goes, cite the sources. Yeah. They can be unconventional. Cite the sources. And I was like, oh, snap. Like, I can use that too. Like, if I believe that someone's credible, if I believe that I can believe what they're saying, like, you know, especially if it's a narrative-based credential I'm looking for.
Right,
like you can find these stories everywhere, and we as people learn best that way. We don't learn best in a PowerPoint and whatever. Sure, that's kind of like that version of accessible, so that way people can review it or whatever, but people learn best in stories.
I have a question for you guys. Have you?
No, you have to answer.
I know you did.
I thought I did.
He kind of did, but
okay.
I
In
mean,
the
he
sense
did?
of like this is what I appreciate you got.
I know, but I didn't.
Okay, so I'll let you.
Say it again. Say it
You
again.
gave the like interviewer answer, and now we want
What was the question? What?
like what do you
What
get
do
personally?
you learn? What do you get out of it? And what do you want your audience to know?
What do I get out of it? Oh, I've gotten a lot, like a lot. I have gotten the network that I have now. So I started in 2015, and it was really bad. It's okay. And like, we even took down episodes because I like hired some interns, and like we were having our meeting and stuff, and they were like, I was like, you want me to take them down? And they're like, yeah. That's so good.
Delete it.
I'm about to do another rebranding, right? Like I want to level up again, right? And I'll share with you guys what that looks like. But what I've gotten out of it is I've gotten just an amazing network. Like, you know, people come from out of town that I've interviewed, and they're like, yo, I'm in LA, or I'm here, do you want to meet up? I'm like, yeah, let's go have some coffee. So like this network is really big that I've gotten out of it. I've also gotten freelance jobs out of it. I get sponsorship money out of it. And Mr. Decatur from the 4th grade, when you told me I talk too much.
We are coming for you.
You have made 5 new enemies.
He straight put me in the dummy corner. He was like,
Mr. Decatur's gonna get you some
he did
hands.
not fuck around. He was like, you spoiled kids and whatever. It's all good.
Don't dwell. You gotta pat it. You gotta pat it.
It made you who you are today.
I get paid for being in his corner now.
In his defense, I needed it. But also, so I've gotten to kind of capitalize on who I am. I love talking to people genuinely. I'm curious, so I get to satisfy that. Also, like, you know, I get sponsorship money, right? So it kind of like, it's an extra source of income for me. And during COVID, like, that was really helpful. And then, like, also now, like, I'm producing a movie, and it's because of the skill sets that I learned from the podcast. And like, it's done, it's cut, it's filmed, it's not cut, but it's filmed, it's all the recording, like it's all in Adobe Premiere, like I'm just editing, and like that's a direct evolution of the podcast. There's no way I could have done that without understanding how to talk to people, how to interview. So I've gotten that out of it, and then it just keeps growing. And I've also too gotten feedback where, so if you guys have listened to my podcast, like, you know that I'll be very vulnerable with my things that I've gone through. And I don't want to keep rehashing them. If you've heard it, you know. But I've had people reach out and say, I'm sober now because of you.
Wow.
Oh my God.
You know what I mean? Like, that's big. That's a big responsibility, right? And then I've also gotten people say, hey, I started landscape architecture because of your podcast. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
You're like, wait, I want to take full credit for that because I don't want you to come back to me here.
When you're counting details, it's like, fucking But just to be an advocate in that way is like, it's really, really meaningful, right? And, you know, like the other things that I've gotten out of it, of course, is just like, now, like, you guys are my people, like, you know, like, talking with you, like, you guys are into, like, recording and talking about things, and it's like, you know, sometimes, like, it's very niche what we do, and not everyone at a party wants to hear. Then you find your people, and you're like, no, like, this is where I get to geek out about, like, equipment, or this, or, so what I've gotten out of it is I've got a teaching position out of it. You know, like there's so many different. It just keeps rewarding, and it's very, very, very gratifying. And I've had days where I wanted to stop, and you know, like it's like a lot of work, and but I know that like it's something.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Like, I think I want to know, does anyone here feel like they have more agency over their time now because they did something like this? Like, we volunteered ourselves to do this. You know, I feel like on those days where you're like, oh, I want to stop or something. I have this moment of like, because it's me doing it, I also get to say when things get done or not.
Right.
And then I realize if I took 2 months off and didn't produce something, people are still there, right? Like that was the thing that like I think in that perfectionist sort of like over preparing kind of mentality, you're like, if I don't do this, then it's all gonna fall apart. And then when I saw that it doesn't, I was like, like that opened up my eyes a lot. I was like,
We're gonna
wait a second.
We're gonna kick it back.
yeah, exactly. Like, okay, so I can have control over my time despite the goals even that I set for myself, you know. And so that's why I want to like, I hope that's a shared experience, and I think that would be.
Something
We
just learned that.
The thing is, it's funny because like, I mean, we all think have a similar approach where sometimes we don't talk to each other just because life gets in the way, and that's totally fine. And we understand that this is like a side hustle that we're doing, passion project. Hopefully more, right? But this starting as a passion project. But we will maybe not talk about this podcast for like a month and then be like, should we maybe get back to it? And we'll like have to go. We'll go to Graciela's house. We have a little studio corner there, and we'll be just talking from like 8 to midnight, and then be like, "That was great."
Probably started playing.
But like that was great, and then we go home tired.
Podcast hack.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This is like the best hack ever in the world. Is pre-record a lot. And then
like
slow
stack
it
them.
down.
Yeah.
Right? Because like then you have content to release as you go.
But that's what you guys are doing, right?
We have like some backup interviews. So we have a couple of interviews that we haven't edited yet. So in case, for whatever reason, we have that kind of on deck. So if we don't feel like interviewing someone or you don't have anyone to interview, we have people.
Right,
So.
and the thing is, the nature of our setup is that we have the interview, and then we have the side talk talking about the interview. And those are always so fun because then it gives us a lot of content that we don't really have to think about. Like it's just like, okay, we have all this stuff to talk about, and it's so relatable.
Less pressure.
Yeah.
You know what it is? Is going to a party and then leaving and then talking shit about the people on the right.
Oh my god!
That's my favorite part of any party.
And it does. I mean, it's like we're not trying to be lazy, but basically, like that's how we get the side talks. So we always try to find something that follows one another, that then kind of leads onto one single thing. But I think with us, like we've found that definitely we have more agency over time because we realize that we're not trying to we're not trying to like rely 100% on just the listeners. We're also it is also a passion project too, and it is something that we do get out of it like a lot from, and so like we're talking to our audience 100%, but then it's also like it's okay because I'm pretty sure our audience is like choking us and they're like, oh,
yeah, right.
What's the next episode?
Exactly. So it's
With my favorite podcast, I get like that. When they skip, when they skip a week.
Oh yeah. You kind of want them to be missing you.
My editing podcast, bro. Don't take away my I need that.
You said every Saturday. I cleared my Saturdays.
For this. Yeah, I feel like that about like Brené Brown. I'm like, girl, I know you needed a sabbatical, but
I know.
I need you.
Not horrible.
Well, so my favorite podcasts are all like Dungeons and Dragons podcasts, and so when they have to like get a whole group of people together, like they got to do a lot to go through recording, and then I catch myself being like, "You said every other week," and I was like,
that's what you said.
"Okay, you know what? You expanded from every week. Okay, all right. I'm like, I give you that grace." And then when they skip or they go, "We're gonna have to play a back episode," I'm like, I'm gonna listen, but I'm gonna be mad about it because I don't know. I totally understand that, but then I have more sympathy now where I'm like, all right, okay, I also need the time. But
in all seriousness, that is actually something. I'm glad that came up organically because it's actually something very important that somebody told me, and I've been pretty bad. I've missed a lot of episodes and I've fluctuated and stuff. And somebody was like, "You're breaking trust
Wow.
with your audience, right? And sometimes I know, and you are.
I think distance makes a heart grow fonder.
So when you come back, people are gonna realize.
drop.
They're gonna be like,
I'm back. But it's hard, you know. I'm by myself. I don't have the resources, and like dealing with life, and also like I think taking the time to kind of like be like, okay, where I've done 2 years, where am I going, and just kind of like I'm giving myself grace, and I'm like.
Especially in the beginning too. In the beginning, like when you're just now starting it all, and I think for us, like, or maybe I should speak for myself. Like I felt, to be like totally transparent, like I have felt the pressure of like not being consistent, because then I look back and I'm like, did we lose it? Like, did we do this? Are people even? And so I'm constantly thinking about that too, where I'm like, I want to be consistent. I do want to release every other Friday. Like I want that, like badly. But it just doesn't happen that way sometimes, and I think we're just giving ourselves a lot of grace in the very beginning. And because we, like, that's the other thing too, is that we are young professionals.
Yeah.
And it has, it's just one of those things that
I think we all need a sigh.
it's just like, I know. You guys, like, it's hard out there. It's hard. I have rough days sometimes. Like, even in our talking, like our little therapy sessions, like I'm on the verge of crying because I'm trying to understand what the heck it is I got into for the past 5 years. I got a piece of paper, and now I like a job at 8 to 5. Then I'm like, what am I even doing? Like I don't even know what I'm doing. And like, who do I like? It has just been one of those seasons where it's like I'm losing my footing some days, and some days I'm like, okay, I'm good, you know. But it's just one of those weird things where as like you're trying to transition into an adult. And then also on top of that, then I see other people doing things my age or younger, and they're like consistent. They're at it. They're this, and I'm like, that's not me. That's not me, man. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Like, can you just tell me? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. But it's like what you're saying, like with like working, kind of realizing, okay, so this is landscape architecture. And like you're talking about like agency of your time, but like it's like to me it's also like agency of my career. Because then I'm like, this is how I think that this is another way to practice landscape architecture, and I get to do that.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I love that.
And it's like it's new, and I'm trying it out, and it's okay. It's there. The good thing is it's there.
Yes.
We skipped an episode, like. Go back and listen to something else, because every time, like when I edit, every time I hear something else.
Oh yeah.
Every time. And I'm like, how do I tell people without sounding like arrogant, like, yo, I think you should listen to this like 3 times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because I know that even though I did the research, did the questions, was there, edited, I still get something different.
Who here knows what the feeling of imposter syndrome is?
Oh.
I think all the hands are up.
Hands raised.
Start on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll talk. I want everyone to hear on this. But so when I started, I was like, I'm gonna call it the Landscape Architecture Podcast.
Hey.
I'm gonna brand that shit.
Yeah.
Came in. This is.
You came in hot.
Yeah.
Came in
Yeah, you
hot.
did. I was like,
Do
no,
you
that's the
know
one.
how much suffering that? But I knew what I was doing. I knew and I didn't know. And I'll kind of explain that. So I knew from a marketing, so I went to the Ohio State University, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys know this. She knows because she's from Ohio. But like literally, it's called the Ohio State University. Like you have to say
the.
the.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Ohio
Like
State,
they
yeah.
branded it, and I was like,
And that was relatively recent too, where people
Yeah.
start to make they're still making fun of it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, because you make them say
You're
it.
the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make them say
You
it.
make them say it.
Y'all gotta say it.
So from a branding perspective, I was like, well, like I went to that school and I like kind of understood it. I kind of understood a little bit cheesy about it, but I also understood like, hey, it's there's something there to that. So I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. And then I started it, and I was like, oh, I'm not good at this. Like, and I'm not being self-deprecating. Like, I really was not. Like, I didn't know how to interview people. Like, some people are just good. Like, I could talk and I could have a conversation if I meet you and we could get down, and we get down, like, good. Yeah. But then in the interview setting, now everything changes, the person gets nervous, I get nervous, and I've always been I still am very, very, very insecure about my intellect and how I see things and all of that, right? And it's something I'm dealing with and whatever, that's my thing. But, like, early on, they were really bad, and I'm like, wait, you are the landscape?
This is it.
And, like, now I feel like I found my voice, and I know how to connect, and I know what research, and I know what to push, and I know what to pull, and I'm getting better, and I'm not quite there. But, like, going through that imposter syndrome was, like, really hard. And I think for me, it was even more difficult because I think there really was an element of, like, being an imposter. Right? Like, marketing myself as something more than I was and letting myself catch up. And in good marketing, you always should brand a little bit outside of your reach and then grow into it. But I was like,
I'm the one. Like, I'll catch up, go on. I'll catch up, go.
So the reason why I bring that up is I'm like, you all raise your hands, and I know for a fact that all of you at some point have been like, yo, who am I to be talking about landscape? And I just want to,
I really want to
before
talk
I say
about
that, before I release to the floor, I just want to say that, okay, I'll say two things. One is I've interviewed some of the highest profile people in our industry, and I will tell you right now that every single one of them has a moment of insecurity that I could see, whether it's in pre or during or in post. I'll have a leader of a major like I don't want to say names, but then afterwards, was I okay? Did I sound okay? Yeah. And I'm like, yo.
Just sign me for.
But he sounded so eloquent and smart and you know, like and I was like, okay, that kind of humanized
that levels
it.
the plane.
And it happens all the time. How do I look? How do I feel? Did I sound okay? Did I sound smart? Did I stumble my words? I said too much. Okay, you know. Yeah. Whew, that was a long-winded way of me being like, now let's hear your shit. Yeah. Like, what? Where have you been like? I don't know who wants to go.
Oh, sorry.
Okay,
I'm
she's
like, I feel, okay, so I feel like, especially during pandemic, you know, like this is when for me the podcast started to really like, I had more time to do it, and it was being more consistent. That I was like changing my bio every like 2 weeks. I was like, the experience of no. It's the storytelling of no. I don't know. And I still do it, but but then I have the great benefit of my brother. He is a therapist, so I was able to talk to him about what imposter syndrome really is. And I was
so you like legit identify.
Oh yeah, like because and I wanted to have him on the podcast, but then he just had. You know, his son, my nephew, so I was like, all right, fine, I'll give you a break, but you have to come back and we're going to talk about this so people can understand from a, not medical, like from a therapeutic level, what imposter syndrome is. And it is a like belief that you are not meeting a standard without identifying what those standards are and who set them. It's like, so like that's a big gap. And don't quote me on that. I'm not trying to, don't cite that we don't know. But the piece of information he gave me that was like, I hold on to is we all just mentioned how much, like how we upped our skill level in all these different fields that are outside of what we learned in school. He said, it is perfectly reasonable to say that I am better than the average person in this specific thing that
That's so
I
hard
do.
To say,
So it's okay to say, like, you might feel like you're an imposter, but the reality is more like you do have a skill level above an average person. So if an average person who had never studied landscape architecture came into an office and was like, I'm gonna do this, then you are still better than them, right? So you can't say that you're you're being an imposter because there's certain skills that you have that no one else has. and it's okay to know that you are capable of it. So you can break that down to whatever skill it is that you're feeling you're not meeting. So if there's a standard you think you're not meeting, the hard part for me is when you start to look at all the titles and all the things you have to do, and you're like, okay, well, I might be okay in this, but I don't feel like I'm doing okay in that. And that's hard to manage. And that's when you need the community, because that's what, you can't do it on your own. Like, I decided, can't do it on your own. I have a therapist, I have my brother, I have my friends and my family. It's like, because I don't think it's possible to hold all of those standards in your head and then think that you can suss it out on your own.
I will say there is a level of healthy imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that pushes
that could
you.
motivate you.
Yeah.
And then be like, Like allow that to help you level up, but without like paralyzing it, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like the right amount of healthy fear to make you better, to like be a little bit unhappy with the last cut, or that so you excel, but without it like destroying you.
Yeah.
I think too, like it's been challenging for me to balance between like having a level of self-awareness, like a good amount of self-awareness, and then that other aspect of like not having this imaginary person that you want to be in your mind that you will probably never be, or maybe you will be, but way down, and like, you know, when you get more experience. And I think I have to let go of this imaginary Graciela sometimes of like, that's not you. Like, you're whoever you think that you should be is actually not what is in store for you. Like, you don't know, and it's way better anyways. But like, I have like this like you said, imaginary standard, and then on top of that leads to so many other ugly things. Like, it leads to like a lot of jealousy and a lot of self-comparison, or comparing other people, people pleasing. Like, that's just like the monsters that come through that. And I'm like, you know, I think I would much rather just being content with where I am right now, but still like you said, having that healthy level of imposter syndrome of like, no, but I want to keep working hard and I want to be better at these things, but being okay with the fact that you're not at this certain level that you think you have to be. And I think even too, like working at a firm, like I've realized that like when I work with people and they see that I'm like just self-deprecating myself, it's like, okay, like they don't have anything to work with at that point.
Right.
Where I'm like, where I'm basically like, oh man, I suck. I should have done that. Why didn't I do that? And they're like, okay, well it's okay. Like, you can do better next time. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have a whole other 8 hours tomorrow. I'm like, why did I do that? And then all of a sudden I embarrass myself because I'm self-deprecating.
I'm curious if there's an opportunity for like just same emotions, same everything, but just rebranding it. Right? Instead of being like imposter syndrome, being like I don't know what a rebrand of that would be.
Well,
like, or like you know, like I was bad at this, maybe like a rebranding opportunity, or contextualizing it and saying you know, this is a skill set I need to develop. Same thing, but different different framing, right?
Yeah, recently I do improv at a local theater in Miami.
Say what?
I know, right?
Yes, that's right. I've made Kacey cry out of laughing during the stuff. I just spit on her from the stage. But no, we were doing like this exercise, and I don't remember what it was, but this one girl was like, oh man, I suck at this. And this other guy was like, well, you suck at it now, but like you shouldn't say I'm bad at it. You should say I'm bad at it right now, but I will get better. You know, and I thought that was so kind of him. I was like, wow, that's such a good, and it's important to recognize, and I think that is kind of the thing. Instead of just being like, man, I'm the worst, you have to be like, okay, like right now I'm not where I want to be. So now I just need to work harder to get to where I want to be.
Right.
And it's all about like just being very forgiving with yourself and just open with like where you are and accepting it in a way, not accepting it to accept it, to be like, oh, this is it, this is where I'm going to be, but to allow yourself to recognize where you are in a way that's like, well, this is just my journey right now and I'm working towards whatever it is.
Yeah, it's like this is a situation. It's not who I am.
It's not who I am.
Right,
It's like,
exactly,
it's not,
yeah.
Ooh, I like that. Situation, yes.
Divine has the best quotable moment. I'm so happy I get to walk with her every day. Like, she'll just have these questions. Like the other day, she was like, "When I rise, we rise." And I'm like, "Oh."
Wait, where? What context? What was this?
It doesn't matter.
Going upstairs.
It doesn't matter.
It applies to every context.
It doesn't matter. It works forever.
Food, but it's just like,
Stand to leave the table.
Had a burrito.
What time to leave the table?
Let's go.
So just put it out there. I was like, every time.
I was gonna.
sorry. Go.
Sorry. I was gonna just say, like, I feel like there's two different people that are like chasing. It's like the imposter who feels like they're not good enough and they're trying to get better, and then there's like the ambitious person who's maybe like there's still the same idea. Like you're not where you want to be. You're not where you want to be.
But you keep going.
But you're ambitious. You're like, I gotta be better, you know.
I like
And it's
that.
just an attitude difference. Like
Right, everyone needs to Google Ira Glass, The Gap.
You told me about this before.
That will
that's right.
change your life.
Yeah, can you put it in the chat?
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I think, the key is like a confidence with yourself also. Just being like, just what you said. Like, it's not necessarily I'm bad. Yeah. Like, I am going to get to where I want to be. I'm not there yet, but I'm going to get there. And just not being ashamed of where you currently are. Because that's a part of it.
And also recognizing, like, yo, we're pushing through it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that would have
Yeah.
stopped
Yeah.
already. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it's hard to put yourself out there and have
Yeah.
people here. And I don't know about you, but the first time you heard your voice editing,
Oh, don't even get me started, man.
To this day,
this
I'm like,
see.
what?
And to me, all of you have great voices, right? Like, I listen, I'm like, these are great, but I know that it's different for when, because I think
Right.
there's like an acoustic difference, right? Between like,
It's like a
what you
dissonance.
hear
You're like,
and-
yeah.
And so that's the thing for us. And also hearing yourself talk and like the ums and the
Oh yeah.
like, that's what I hear. When I'm like being negative about my editing, I'm like, dude.
Quick.
Split
that out.
How do I even have friends, dude? Yo, sometimes you say like, oh,
people just listen to me.
are you like? And I talk a lot, so I'm like,
Luckily, none of y'all have to talk with Graciela because she has the most beautiful voice. And I'm just here like, hey guys, I'm here too.
Hey guys. Well, then I always say like dang all the time. And so one time I was like dang, and dang, and I'm like, oh, I want to vomit. This is so gross.
One thing that I like doing about more casual podcasts is like, I'm usually not myself during interviews because I'm a little bit more rough. Like I cuss and I like, you know, and like that's more me. Like that's the real me. And so like when I'm interviewing like whatever hoity-toity Starchitect, right? Like I can't be my real me. You know, like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why when I get to interview someone, I kind of, and they're cool, I'm like, oh.
yes.
Yeah.
I interviewed somebody, I think it was Kofi Boone, and he was like, I think I dropped
love
the
that,
F-bomb
yeah.
on accident. And he was like, yo, we could have cussed. And I was like, we could have started that way earlier. But I was like, man, how do I feel that? I should do a questionnaire, like, are you okay?
How do you feel about the F word?
But I mean, I'm not
But it's your
going-
platform.
But, you know, okay, I can if I wanted to. But I'm not going to. I choose to be like, no, this is not the space for it. Right? I'm not going to do it in my office.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to do it on a meeting with an architect and civil engineers and stuff like that. I realize that there's a separation between that and that. But when there is opportunities, I'm like, okay, let's
If there's an opportunity to drop an F-bomb.
I want to ask, has any one of you been recognized like, yo, you're design unmuted, or you're the landscape nerd? And that,
Amazing.
I know. I kind of already knew that. I mean, I suspected, and now I just want to hear it.
Yeah.
And also, like, well, what does that feel like? Like, talk about it.
It is like it's so sweet and like because it's me doing it, right? So even though I'm aware there's an audience, I can see analytics, I can see numbers.
Yeah.
And then even people who reach out to me, it's still all digital. So when someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, are you the landscape nerd? I'm just like, yes, but I'm sort of like, you're used to seeing me like flat, like behind the screen, right? So I just want to be like, but it's so nice.
It's a head trip, right?
It is, and I want to like talk to them and like actually have a full conversation. And at this point, I do. Like, this is awesome, but I end up, my voice is so sore because I like been talking to everybody, and it is a head trip, but it's really like encouraging too that people like what I do, but also like me enough to say hi. Like, you know, we know people who are like, I like their work. I don't know about them though.
But they're
so
approachable.
like, so yeah, exactly. So I'm just
person.
exactly.
This was our conversation, this conference. You know, you get to see all these names. I'm like, oh, that's that person. That's that person. And I'm like. And I was telling Maci, I was like, you know, my biggest fear is like when I admire somebody's work is when I go up to them and they're like not nice people. Because that's done for me.
Yeah,
I
then
don't
I'm
care.
like, okay.
If you're a shit person, I'm sorry. Like, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah.
So
Say never
meet heroes. Yeah.
So when I meet the people and they're nice, I'm like, yes, I can actually like you now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not making up this idea of what this person is.
Exactly.
I will say though that you have to be very careful with that in regards to like they could have just like been in a fight with their spouse.
Right.
Oh,
you like
yeah,
you know,
context,
like
you
context.
They
know,
could,
yeah.
but you don't know their
True
human
that.
experience. Like they could have this, they could have stubbed their toe, they could have,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, or like they didn't have enough fiber. Or something.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're just like, yo, I'm a big fan, and they're like.
Not today. I didn't have enough fiber, so I gotta go.
So it's like you have to, a little bit like you have to like give them one more.
Yeah.
Too, you know, like because maybe just they're having a human experience too, and like, and then the second time, then now you're done. You know.
I mean, like I still love their work.
Sure,
I just know
right.
that okay, there's a separation. They're not somebody that
Yep.
I want to spend time with or even talk to. But I like your stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
But I really do like the definition of the imposter syndrome that you gave because I've been thinking about it. I'm like, what am I even like trying to? Where is this other thing?
Yeah. Oh, something else I like realized because you had mentioned confidence, and I was like, oh yeah, that's another thing. Is that there's this bizarre expectation that confidence is something you already have and can obtain, and you're just not accessing it.
Yeah.
Like, and no, confidence builds, and you had said that, and it's like, yeah, that's a thing that we don't talk about. I think in school we don't talk about. You know, they're like, oh, you'll get more comfortable, is what we say. So as if, and I think people then make it seem like you're surrounded by confidence. You just got to get into it, and like that's not how it works.
Yeah.
You build it up from the inside.
And it's also not just linear.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right? Like it's gonna.
Yeah.
Like some days, man, I'm like, oh, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm a shit designer, like I'm this, you know what I mean? And then I'm like, and this is what I say, I have a narrative that I do know. So you've been here before, you've gone through it before, you could do this, you could design this, and then you go, and then I go. So it's easier for me now, right? But also, like I've been in the, you know, I'm 47, I've been in the creative industry in some fashion for 30 plus years, right? And I still just sometimes just
But it is a mindset you have to change, like, and you have to work really hard to change it. Like, you have to replace those thoughts with, like, the truth, you know. And sometimes that's what I have to practice all the time, and I'm still not in, like, not where I want to be in that regard. But I think that one big thing is that, like, I think I saw this video on, like, LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is always interesting because it's social media, but it's like professional, you know. It's like, how deep can you go, you know? But with this video, it was like showing how this ball was going up, or I think it was going up a ramp, at like a really small incline, and they pushed the ball, and it was like a very straight line going up, and it went up just shoop. And then it did it alongside of this curvy ramp, like this curvy thing. And so that they pushed the ball at the same time. And you would think, like, in your brain, you're like, oh, it would take the ball to get from point A to point B much slower on this little curvy thing because it's like, it's got obstacles, right? they got from point A to point B at the same time. And I was like, yo, that's profound. That's profound.
LinkedIn can get it though.
Like, hold up.
Right.
That is life simplified. Like there are just times in life, like you go through these big, huge, like, things, and you're like, oh my God, why did I go through that? Like, this is hard, this is hard. And then you realize you have to look back.
Yeah.
You have to look back and remind yourself of, like, okay, I'm not where I was, though.
Definitely.
And sometimes that helps you when you're going on this journey, because then you realize, okay, your confidence has built from where it was. Like, you're not who you used to be. Like, you're not where you were. Like, you've changed, you've grown, you worked really hard to get here. Like, you have to remind yourself of the truth, you know, in that regard.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to my sister the other time because, you know, I'm trying to kind of navigate a lot of kind of career changes, and I'm like, oh, I'm doing this. She's like, you know, just remember, you are living inside your dream right now. And I'm like, that is so true. And like, I'm like, it's okay that I'm working towards another dream, but right now, like, I think about like maybe 7 years ago, I used to work in government, and then I found this architecture firm, and I used to have second Friday off, and then I'll be like, hey, let me just come and like do some research for you, because I don't know CAD, I don't know anything, but I was just liking the energy, open office concept. Every Friday they would have like these project reviews, and I'm just watching them. I'm like, one day I'll be there. And then like I go through this whole career change, go through school, go through the hardest years of my life, and then I like, you know, start working, and I'm like, this is not what it was cracked up to be, but I am still living inside my dream.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like, and like every time I have to remind myself, you're in a dream. Being here is a fucking dream. Like,
Yeah.
Like,
We were saying like, one day I think I would love to go to ASLA one day, like that. I think.
yeah.
I just had a moment like 20 minutes ago. I was like, I can't believe I'm sitting in a room with all these podcasters.
Yeah.
Like, what? I never had that in my mind.
I was also gonna say, because you said your sister, I also like to use outside industry people as my like gauge.
Yes.
Because then I'll have like my one friend who is from like when I used to work in hospitality, and she'll just be like, oh yeah, I remember when you were just like recording, or you talk about it and you're all quiet about it, and it's like, and now you're on like Instagram, like blasting about it, or you're with people, like other people see what's going on, and the ones who care about you, I think, are great checks. Like you'd be like,
that's such a good point.
how did I seem to you? And especially when they say you look happier, to me is like another thing. Like when you feel more satisfied, or you look like you're doing the thing that you want to do, you're doing your dream. Like they see that, because they don't know anything about podcasting or landscape architecture. Fine, but they can know you and be like.
Also, too, you know, you gotta remember, like, any industry that you're in is not gonna be IT.
No.
100%.
Oh yeah.
You know, so you might be like, oh man, like I didn't know I was gonna be doing this, and I didn't know this, but then you're like, oh, well, actors have to go through this, doctors have to go through this, nurses have to go through, you know, and it's like everyone has to eat a little shit somewhere. And we have to realize, like, okay, well, this is ours. So, like, how do we make the best of it? Yeah.
I wanted to also talk about the imposter syndrome thing, because I think that part of it is like cultivated by the culture of design education.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I've realized when I started, like when I got like, you know, start working, blah, 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 and like my boss is like, okay, well, why don't you take a crack at this concept design? And I'm like, not only was it always my dream, but now I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my God. So I'm texting my friend, I'm like, oh my God, like, I have to show this to my boss tomorrow. And it feels like the worst crit that's going to happen.
Oh, yeah, yep.
I'm like, why did we get trained to expect like criticism that is mostly leaning towards what you need to fix and not what's there? And then you think, I started, at least for me, I started thinking like, now I'm like, I'll do something and I'm like, okay, now let me look at it and see what's wrong with it. Because that's how I'm used to people looking. What's right with it?
Because then the crit is supposed to help you, like fix things. But if you're already, you're so focused on the wrong before you're really thinking about the right. It's you misplace your confidence. You're like, I know I got this wrong.
You're expecting all
You're not confident that you're doing something right.
And so like for me, I always like advocate. It's like we need to switch the way like this design critic thing. It's like, let's not just point out what's wrong. I get it, like it's good for you to grow and like be told, okay, this fix this, fix that, but like, man, like,
yeah.
You know what I'm curious about is like, maybe we should treat design like how we would treat a child. Right?
Oh, like you give them so much grace.
You would never just be
system.
like, yo, this.
Yeah.
Right? You have to be like, this is how to like develop them, right? And we're not really doing that. All we're doing is just saying what's bad, and then that's all you're worried about.
I wonder if like the academic way of teaching design was like created and curated by bad communicators, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and so they delivered the information as like directly and efficiently as possible, and because that was a decent method of teaching at the time, it never adapted. Because like I have my firm is very small and my program is really small, so we all kind of like, we can't afford not to like each other, right? So we can't that's super harsh like criticisms. And I don't think we are like a worse designers because of that. I think we're better. I think we're so much more receptive to change, and we don't marry our emotions to our designs because like I said, the misplaced confidence. You can change it, and I know that to me is like why I agree, it's inherited. It's not something that we believed in, it's something we were taught. And it's really, I think, doing a disservice for designers to be creative, because you're like, I'm more confident in what's wrong in this, and I'm relying on someone else to tell me what's right versus the other way around.
Yeah, like I don't think you want to be paralyzed by the idea that someone's going to try to help you improve something, which that's the thing. Like sometimes, your teachers or whoever's like above you, your supervisors, you think you have to fear them, but really like that's, if you view it in a different light, like this is someone that just knows more and just wants to share that with you. So I think what I try to do also is like foster some kind of comfort where you feel like you don't have to be scared to design because you're like, what if everything's wrong? That's totally fine. Things being, if the whole thing is wrong, you're like, well, now we know what not to do, you know? Which I think like that's something that my program is also like our program. We all went to FIU. Also pretty small. Our graduating class was like 8 people. But the professors we had, I think were all super nice, but still like, I got the master's. Like we learned a lot. Like, we weren't just like babied through this thing. We had our rough nights, we pushed ourselves, but we didn't have the fear like that we couldn't design,
But I will say too, I think we had the benefit of getting objective criticisms versus subjective compared to
a lot of other
the architecture, architecture criticism. Or the architecture critiques, I should say, because I remember, like, we all did the 5-year track, which you have to do the 2-year track, and we talk about this all the time. But, like, how different they approach critiques versus landscape architecture, like, they're the landscape architect professors that we had in school. I'm so grateful for just the amount of objective criticisms that we got, because I had never, like, and not once did I get one professor say, I don't like that.
Yeah, that's
they
not even
never said that.
Yeah.
But I got that a few times in the architecture crits. So it's you then you see how that affects students. I remember I was working with an architecture student, and she was so incredibly talented in architecture. Like, I love her. I worked with her. Like, incredible. Okay, I had never in my life have seen so much fear of like, what are they going to say? And that was not only her, but everyone else in her class. Like, everyone was like, what are they going to, they're going to hate, they're going to just, and then they were just like beating themselves up before they even like walked into the room to present. And it was like, you're okay. Are you kidding me? Like, this work is the best I've ever seen you create. It's beautiful. Why are you, like, what's going on? Like,
but that's the culture. That's what I was talking about. Like,
right.
We didn't necessarily have like harsh critics, but it's like that 2 hours before we got a pinup. Everybody's on edge. Like, it's like everybody's like, you're waiting to like. It's like It's like, what's going on? Like, it's not bad, but there's something that's happening here where everybody's afraid that something is gonna go wrong. Like, it's like
the worst case scenario.
The worst case scenario. So it's like, yes, people aren't actively being mean, but they're not actively actually creating a culture where people feel like, I would love, like for me when I teach, my goal is like, take this as an opportunity to get better. Like have a conversation.
Right,
Like,
right. So
yeah,
you
like,
don't have to be scared for this. Like,
yeah, like also just go there and ask questions.
Yes.
Like,
That
don't let
was
them
so
be like, I did
empowering,
this, I
yeah,
did this.
ask
Like, no, be
questions.
like, hey, this is what I was trying to do. Like, be like, okay, this is what I was trying to do, right? And then it's like, can you switch the whole? So that's kind of like my goal now, like having enough time from school and trying to reflect and be like, what is that? Because you're right, it's not that people were mean, but everybody was on edge.
Yeah.
We're all on edge.
And I think part of it also, at least for me personally, the whole seeing everyone's work at once and seeing like, oh, she's so much better than me. I was like, oh man, like I would be like, okay, this is the best I could do right now.
Yeah.
And I, at some point I was like, there were some projects I was more proud of, some that I weren't. But when I felt good about a project, then I saw everyone else's and I was like, oh no, mine sucks. Like that's the worst feeling, because it's like, it's not just because someone else's is better, it doesn't mean mine is bad. And I think coming to terms with that is important. But it's hard in the studio environment where the whole thing is like everyone's together all the time and you see like, okay, this person's up here, this person's here, and you see everyone's like development. Yeah, there's like this unspoken hierarchy, and it's just, I think that's part of the stress of it all.
So I recently joined this firm called Loft 64, and I joined them because I was interviewing, going back to like what we've gotten out of the podcast. Like I was interviewing him for the podcast. After I interviewed him, I was like, dude, you're dope. I'm gonna work for you. Okay, like let's talk, right? And so now I'm there, and one of the things.
Congratulations.
Congrats.
Thank you. One of the things that they do that I think was part of early design that's gotten lost, and they kind of reconnected to it, which is the most absolute game changer. And that is whenever there's a new design, the whole team, interns, owner, project managers, we all go to a table, put the base down, and we all just charrette and design and talk. And I will tell you right now that I feel like I'm a good designer. I feel like I've put in my time, so I understand. When I'm in that environment, there's no way I could have came up with a design that good, that fast, and with so much different flavor, right? And we're talking like 20 minutes that probably would have taken me 3 weeks. And then, and it's like, I almost want to start like a movement of preaching to go around and tell everyone to bring back the charrettes and bring back everyone and bring in the interns, because they're gonna see things in a beautifully naive way. Like without kind of boundaries, because they haven't been scorned by civil engineers. You know what I mean? So they're gonna like open up things a little bit more, which is great, and we could reel them back like later. But like they bring that, and they bring also like what's new and what's hip and what's cool, and then the owner brings like all the experience, and the project manager brings in the logistics, and we all just design. Boom. And it was and then kids excited and like take pen out of their hand and just like,
My turn.
And it's really.
Just imagine like kids fighting over something. And you're like,
And after the first day of doing that, I was like, yo, this is normal. And he's like, oh yeah. And then it's scheduled, like, oh, new project, new design. And I'm like, we need that back so hard, and we need to do that with school. Imagine if like, okay, so there's usually like there's like the A students, the C students, and right? In between, right? There's one dude that's always like, I know the other. Okay, dude. And then there's like the super talented ones, and this is all just like in our heads. But I'm just saying, we all know like we've kind of done that little thing where we've like whatever. But imagine if like there was you have to do your design project and you have to do your design project, right? But imagine if we're all classmates and we all have the same assignment, but we all shred it together. And I was like, I'm going for ADA, right? I wanted to be super ADA, right? And you're like, sweet. And you're like, I want sound. And we all do this. And we just help you and lay down the trace and we all sketch, and you're like,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah.
And now it's still your design and your thing, but we all contributed it. And then when you put it up on the wall, yo, you diss me, you're dissing all of us.
That makes a lot of sense. I like that. Yeah.
It's more like community based.
Yeah,
Right?
I
We've
love
all
that.
shredded this and we've all thought it together. And you don't have to keep a certain idea or whatever. It could have just developed, and maybe like you put something on hers, and then you're like, you know what, I'm gonna put that in mine too, and I'm like, whatever, right? We're so married, and I'm like, this is my design.
Yeah. And that's what, I don't know where that carryover happened. It probably just with the discipline itself, like branching off of architecture and planning, like there just might be models that work better for that.
No, I
but
think we got lazy.
Well, I also said you were in the room, but I was like, I feel like it was inherited down from like bad communicators who were just like delivering their critique as most efficiently as they saw possible, and then that just became the norm. And like I think lazy is a good term for that, because like you didn't take the time to talk.
Sure.
You just want me to tell you like, okay, this Patty's design, great. Okay,
Yeah.
Casey's done. You're like, great, done. Like that's how to make it like very industrial.
I think it's too much pressure to design on your own, and I just didn't know that there was another way.
That makes
I would
sense.
bring people over and be like, hey, what do you think? And they'd be like this, and they'd go back to their desk. Get down.
Yeah. Like help. Yeah. Like let's all just do this, especially as a firm when it's all your name.
And I was gonna say, like in education, like you're very much it's a competitive field. No matter what program you're in, it's competitive. You're always comparing. I think in our class we were open. We didn't feel like we had to gatekeep information where you're like, I'm actually gonna add this really cool bridge and nobody's thought of yet. We would like share it. I thought that was really nice. But I think speaking about what you're talking about, like when you work in a firm, you're not on your own. Like you kind of have to break out of that system of like, I need to do this on my own. I have to carry all that weight. You have to depend on the people around you. And at the same time, you never work on your own. Like as in a firm, you have your team, but you also work with architects and you work with the engineers. So I think education has to do a better way of teaching us that it's a collaborative field. It's a creative field. You need to be open to trying new things and working with people in very different ways that have a very different lens about what they're designing, what you're designing. I think that we should probably bring that back to, and it comes not just the studio and like the work and like a firm, but in school, like having collaborative studios. I think that doesn't happen as often as like it should, because that's really what the career looks like.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I just wanted to say, I was actually talking to a friend of mine about this the other day, how school was so stressful, and I looked back on it and I was like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, why were those the worst years? Like, why was I so depressed? And I'm just like, we really didn't have to go through any of that. It could have been really cool. And then I know for our graduating class, we talked about it all the time. We were like, we want to have a studio where it's like all of us working on a project where it felt more like an actual firm and like we're actually working on something together. And it never happened. But I think that should be the future of it, like dividing them into smaller groups and having them think through ideas as a unit, because it takes a lot of stress off and you come up with better stuff. So it's just, I think it's a win-win.
Yeah.
That's actually my plan for my spring semester students.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because, it's derived from a very nerdy thing. I was like, I love Dungeons and Dragons. We all know this. And then so Dungeons and Dragons in a sense, like the way I'm viewing it is like collaborative storytelling.
Yeah.
And so I'm having them like start off by doing that. You have to be a unit. You're an adventuring party,
I
right?
love that.
You can't. One person they break off. It's probably not for a good reason, and you're gonna reap the consequences of that.
Yeah.
Unless everyone's agreed that person's going. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so that is how I want to approach it, because I agree. I think that, and that wasn't I didn't derive out of a very insightful conversation like this. It just came out of like,
You're like D&D rules.
Let's
do D&D all day.
She's on brand.
I look back and you guys say, I'm like, right, that's why I'm doing this. That's that collaborative.
Right.
Dungeon
Master.
There's something really important that I've been wanting to say for a really long time, and this is like the appropriate context because it's all podcasters, right? And when I was starting out, I knew early on, like, one, I'm generally interested in everybody's story. like no matter where you're at in your career or what you're doing or all of that. And I think that has to do with just other art endeavors that I've done. Like I realize that it's not the subject that's not beautiful enough to photograph. It's the photographer not being able to capture the beauty of whatever it is that you're seeing.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like everybody has something amazing to tell. So I kind of went in really early on with that attitude. Not even like fabricated, I just knew. Like everyone's got a cool story. Like it's my job to pull it up. And, you know, I interviewed this woman, Sarah Abed, and she was doing these community gardens for refugees, and I was like, that's an amazing story, and I want to hear, and so on and so forth. And somebody had the audacity to say, well, nobody really wants to hear, like, nobody really wants to hear, like, a recent grad or a student or whatever. And I was okay, like, no, I know what I'm doing, right? Like, I didn't push back on that, because my Serbian side tends to come out. So I was like, okay, I'm not going to say anything, but that's good. I feel sad for you that you don't see the value in this, right? And they like everyone wants the Starkitects and all that stuff. And in my podcast, I have those, and I have everyone in between.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to get at is like, it doesn't matter like where you're coming from and who you're interviewing and all that stuff like that. Like I'm interviewing someone just because I just genuinely think they're interesting right now as who they are. But also, this person in 20 years could be like the person that revolutionized something. And how wonderful it is that we're doing something that archives their early thoughts.
Right.
Right? And then it's like, oh, I could see from that conversation little seeds of what they were thinking. They didn't even know they were trying to do. And then now, and so what I'm doing is like these like progressive like interviews, like re-interviewing people at different stages. And also, we should say that you are the #1 download podcast on the Landscape Architect.
Congratulations!
So I don't know.
He said, I don't know.
How does that even work?
So what I'm trying to say is like everybody, and it's cool that you're here, right? Because I some whatever. But so I really don't like looking at my analytics, right? And a lot of times like I didn't do it because we didn't have any. And also too, like I didn't want to be like obsessed, right? I felt like I could get into the whole.
I'm
thing
definitely
of,
in there right now.
Right?
Yeah.
And then what's it called? So I was putting together this media package, and it's been like a long time since I checked my analytics, and I'm like, you know what? Let me check. And I looked, and I was like, yo, in the last 6 months we got 100,000 downloads.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, like that's a lot of people hearing me talk and other things, and like, all right, we've done something pretty dope, right? And then I looked, and like I pay for like higher level analytics, and I was like, yo. So somebody like blogged about it or something happened, and then I was like,
thanks, man. That's crazy. I mean, like, I started my podcast after our conversation. Because, like, we were talking, and you were like, oh, I think you'd be good at a podcast.
Well, that laugh.
And then I was like, and then it's like, we're in the pandemic. My nerd side is like, okay, well, Michael said.
Oh my god.
And then I'm like, because like I spoke to you, and you're like, okay, you should record a few episodes, blah blah. So I get into the fun part. I start recording. I got 3 episodes. I'm like, right, now let's go figure out this thing. Oh my god, like it was so much work that I was like, had I not already kind of launched myself and started recording these things and built all this excitement?
It's better not to know.
It's better not to know.
Really.
Yeah.
If you had known before, you wouldn't have done it. And that's,
But like thank you, man. Like you helped inspired me starting this thing, and like helped me so. Grateful. I'm so grateful.
So I guess like what I'm trying to say is like anyone listening, anyone thinking of doing a podcast, like don't get in the minds, don't go chase of like don't go like go after big names and people that you're interested in, whatever is fascinating also, but like there's every, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think
he's like, okay,
a good way to talk about it is like don't focus on what you can't do, just like start where you can. You know, like I think something that I started to do recently was because my old job, like you kind of start the day like, man, I have this meeting and I have this thing I have to submit and at this deadline, you know, or like emails. If you don't like emails, like why would you start your day with all this hard stuff? Like just do the easy task. Like for me now, I kind of have like a very free, open schedule to like do the work that I need to do. So I'll start my day. I'm like, let me do something I enjoy. So I'll like draw a little bit. I'm like, let me get comfortable at a desk first of all, because it's not like a natural environment to be in. Just like in a chair, your table, your monitor. I'm like, let me get comfortable here. Let me start with something that I want to do, this easy task. Focus on what I can do, and then once I'm in that rhythm of like I'm able to do this, like this is, I'm grateful that I have the ability to just do this. Then you can focus on the things that you can't, and just build up your confidence to tackle those things after you've already started. Yeah. Once you've already set into like a momentum, like a rhythm has been, you know, set in motion.
I bullet journal before I start my work. Like I always before like in the day before, I always like, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? And I set my schedule for tomorrow, and then as soon as I sit at my desk, I start, you know, knocking things out or writing stuff on. So I think that that's super helpful. But actually, what I was gonna say though, back to what you were talking about with when you talked about this girl who had done this community garden and someone wrote a note to you and said like, who cares? I was talking
No, in person.
Yo!
Yeah, in a leadership position at a firm.
What?
Okay.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It was
The
like,
audacity here, right?
Yeah. It really got me.
That's
But sorry.
insane. No. But I actually was talking to the art director for Landscape Architecture magazine, and he was just telling me about like how he got into, you know, the Landscape Architecture magazine and how he is, you know, he started off as like, you know, as assistant or whatever, and then he's now where he is. But he was saying like it's just strange because you get a lot of like feedback, obviously like good feedback, helpful feedback about what we're doing right and what we could do better. But then he's like, but like one time we showed a cover image. Like I love their cover images. Like, I love
beautiful.
photography. Their cover images, bro. So they just hit a certain way. And so like one time they had a cover image where it was just a I could like be mistaken, but I think it was like a construction truck and like one of those things that like a crane. It was like a crane, and that was it. That was the piece. And it was about something like about resiliency or something in particular. I'm probably butchering the crap out of it, but something that most landscape architects are not used to seeing in the magazine. It's not about this beautiful, you know, $1 million project, which is awesome to see and is inspiring. But he was like, but the story was so important. It was about, you know, brownfields or whatever. And he was like, I just wanted people to see the other side of it, like what it actually looks like. And so the crane was like a perfect image. And he was saying like people always like, it's always the same type of dude, you know, that always come back like, why, who cares about this? Like, who cares about the crane? Who cares about this? And he's like, you're not seeing the bigger picture.
Yeah.
It's about the story. It's not about the way that the crane look like. It's not about that. It's about the story that comes behind it. And I was like, that's so bad. Like that's so true. Is how we get so caught up in this image of like what like preconceived notion of what we think. We have this expectation of what we think we should see or whatever it is, and then when that thing breaks and you introduce something new or new story, and like then people are just not used to it. And so I like the idea of going against the curve, because then you believe in that more. And so even going either whatever it could be, the podcast style that you have or that you struggle with, you know, what's it called, imposter syndrome, or you have ambition, like whatever it is. I think that if you just keep bending that curve and being okay with breaking the norm and doing all that
hearing
stuff.
like from you, what I'm hearing is artistic integrity.
Right.
Yeah.
Artistic integrity. I think
like,
that's so important.
Keep, you know, like
Yes.
I've been on this really big kick personally for the last, I don't know, maybe 7 years or something, where I've been trying to just really be who I am. And the more that I'm doing that, and the more I'm speaking my truth, the more correct people come to me. It's like as if God is like, okay, now you're ready for this. And then the things that were slowing me down, they're just like, they're not vibing with me anymore. And it was really difficult thing for me to do at first. And now, man, I'm so much happier because I don't waste my energy with things and people that aren't gonna serve me. Not in like what I could get from you, but are we not connecting? We're not.
Right.
And like, it's good.
That's so good. Like I feel like at a personal level, I'm also kind of stepping into that, like really just being like, okay, but like, who are you choosing to be, and not all the things that society told you had to be, especially as a Black woman? Because again, like with the like imposter syndrome thing, I'm like, there are things that I've taken on that I didn't want to take on, but I have to take on because of the social
and cultural expectations
of, or stereotypes that I have to be like, actually this, like, it's so crazy because people are always so surprised at how intellectual I am.
Oh, it's the most insulting thing ever.
Exactly. And like, and I'm like, but I will not even bring myself down to that level. Right? Like, and like little things like that where now I'm trying to be like, what does it mean to be a professional?
Right.
What does it actually mean to be a professional? From the way you dress, the way you present yourself, and all that. Because if you turn into one image, then that idea of artistic integrity kind of gets dissolved, because it's like, oh, success looks like this.
Like visibly looks like
this. And I'm trying to be like, what does that look like for me? And how can I step into that truth so that anybody else can step into their own truth and like be successful, so that it'd be like, hey, this person did it so different, yet it worked. And for me, those are kind of like the role models that I'm looking at. I'm like this person, like, it goes beyond the image, right? Like, this is the thing, like, we're so obsessed with the image in landscape architecture. And I think that's also why I like the podcasting, right? Because it's like, you have to engage. Like, you have to sit down, you have to take it in, like, and then it's like, this like oral record. And like, I come from a culture where we didn't write.
Right.
It's an oral tradition. So to me, it feels a little bit like I'm continuing some type of ancestral knowledge keeping system. Right? So it's there. It's scary, man. Like, I'm like, 10 years from now, what if I don't believe the thing I said?
You shouldn't, probably. I mean, it's a bold statement for me to say, and I don't mean it that hard line. But also, too, if you agree with everything that you said from 10 years ago,
right, yes,
you know what I mean? There should be some type of
growth,
reflection, and be like, okay, well, this is what, from my context and what I had at that time 10 years ago, this is what I understood things to be. However, 10 years later, this still holds, but this thing, this needs a little help. But then you could see like an evolution of that, or de-evolution, or however it is, but
I just want to say there's a little time check, because it's about 1 o'clock, so I don't know if we're going to get kicked out or not, but just want to let you guys know.
Well, I just wanted to say, I don't know if are we continuing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was like,
okay, got it.
She was about to say the most profound thing.
We're gonna have to stop right there.
We're done. I'm gonna let you finish.
She walks home like this.
I just want to make sure you knew that.
What she was gonna say was like, I never feel hurt.
No, but I was gonna say it's a small comment, but I think talking about the idea of professionalism, as an emerging professional, it's really difficult to be like, oh, okay, like even like packing for this trip, I was like, what am I supposed to wear? How am I supposed to look? Does my hair have to be like a certain way? Like, what do I have to do? Like, I don't know. And then seeing people just dressed in like a t-shirt, I'm like, God. Why didn't I think of that?
You needed a patty.
I know. And it's just like little things like that where it's like professionalism feels like you have to be like Yes, sir. Like, yeah, okay. Oh, yes, of course. The dinner was excellent. Like, I can't just be like, oh, yeah, it was dope. Like, and it's like, I feel like there's this idea of not being yourself in a professional setting and having to, like, subscribe to a certain language and dress code and like behavioral status, and it's just so weird. And that's why the expo, I'm always like, my God, I can't, but I can't do it.
Opting out. That's what I think.
So it's just a weird struggle, and I get that's like bigger than landscape architecture. It's just professionalism as a whole is such a strange realm.
When I spoke in Philadelphia at ASLA, I had my own firm at the time, and I was teaching, so I had that money, and I had others, like all these. I was good, and I was doing my own thing, and I didn't represent anybody. So I was like, well, I'm gonna go talk. I'm gonna do how I want to do it. And I wore like flip-flops on stage with everyone all like nice, and then as I was getting into the conversation, I took my flip-flops off, and I was like, yo.
John just told me the story like 2 days ago. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I met Michael for the first time in person. And he was like, so you know when I first met Michael? He was barefoot.
And then somebody came up to me, and I'm just doing me. Like, that's how I feel comfortable. I clean up really nice when I want to.
That's right.
But at certain times, I don't want that, right? Like, I could move through those things. But then somebody came up to me, like, I don't know, it was like a year later or something, and they're like, I knew it was going to be good when the flip-flops came out.
You're like, wait.
I'm going to say something real quick.
Get real.
And then if anyone like that's my culture was like, right? So,
When it's time for questions.
Who? Oh my God.
But yeah.
I felt like it was so, like, I remember learning this before I started like a 9-to-5 job. Like, it was almost easy for me to step into this professionalism, put in that voice, that podcast voice, and be like, hello, my name is Graciela. You know, and so I felt like it was always easy for me to, you know, get to know people I didn't know, and like always get, you know, just be real with people, but then also just, you know, be a good, like, okay. Then when it came to actually going to work at a firm, I ended up finding that I don't know any of these people. I don't know what the culture is like at all. So I feel like literally 70% of what I'm learning as a professional, as an emerging professional, is that I'm learning the culture of the firm itself. And so then I realized, like, my brother has been one big, you know, inspiration for me. Is like, he's really been the person that has made me, like, given me so many tools to help me be who I am. And he bought my first microphone for the podcast. You know, so Alejandro Figueroa, I love you. My bro.
My little sister wants a microphone.
It was on her Amazon wish list.
Exactly. I just ordered it.
Karaoke or something.
No, but really, like, he's awesome. Like, my heart wells up, and I have to hold back because, like, he really is the person that I've kind of helped me be who I am today. And so I called him, and I was like, I don't know, I don't understand. Like, he's just like, but this is part of what, like, this is the crap that you have to figure out.
I got it.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, this is the crap that you got to figure out, is that, like, you need to learn what the culture is like. You need to learn all this stuff. He's like, but that might take a while for you to find where you fit, what's good for you and what you like. If you don't like it after a year, then go dip. But like I found that I was in this uncomfortable zone. I couldn't slip into that as well as I used to, or as well as I thought I did. And so it's been really hard for me, like, get a footing for everything. I'm like, I can't slip into this thing anymore. Like, I'm almost afraid to be myself. I'm afraid to be who I am. I'm afraid of cracking a joke. What if people look at me and, like, how you were talking about, how Michael was saying that I'm afraid of people not looking at people seeing my intellect and not saying I'm not smart enough.
Because they're comparing your professional image or
like,
performance.
Exactly.
And
then I'm like, I'm trustworthy. And then, all of a sudden they ask you the most basic question. And I'm like, I don't. And then the project manager has to answer. So the answer is yes. And I'm like, okay, peace out.
I did want to say, just because from like a neurodivergent perspective of like what professionalism looks like, it's so hard to obtain. Like, I'm very fortunate. So shout out to Dayru and shout out to Jamie Schwartzberg, because that's my boss. She gives me the flexibility, and like she can see it in me. She's like, I feel like being here this much, like these many hours. She's like, I feel like that's too much for you. And I was like, thank you for saying that, because I didn't know how to say that, because I didn't know I was allowed. I didn't know that. But then I like reduced my hours, or I have a really flexible schedule, and I love routine. So like I need things to be a certain way to feel comfortable, like to get in my desk right in this really weird environment. And I'm instantly more productive, and I'm able to do a week's of work, like a week's worth of work in 3 days, because I'm given that time, because my brain works differently. And even though it's not a traditional professional model, I'm able to explore what my professionalism looks like. And I don't know if I would get that anywhere else. And that's something I also really hope we see change in the industry. Because I know we see that, you know, the reduction in the work days, and I think that's great. But I think that could benefit so many people, because professionalism doesn't have one view anymore, doesn't have an image anymore, and we're all like, I think, starting to become proof of that. So
I think it's so funny because a lot of people in school are just night owls. Like they work at night. Their productive hours are at night, and the biggest switch for them is like you come into a firm, you have to be here at 7 a.m. They're like, when does that happen?
I submitted my project at that time.
And like that's actually when I go to bed. Like, I think it's a funny switch, and I think the pandemic even brought out this idea of like the working day looks different for everybody, and like productive hours shift completely. Like, I've started to realize that I was a morning person. Not that I enjoyed the morning, like waking up is hard, but I liked it working in the morning more. But then now some days I feel like working at night better, and I'm just more productive during that time. And if I have a job that lets me work when I can, when I'm like, when I'm not going to waste an hour at my desk, like, just open the email, Kacey. Just read it. I'm like, later, you know. When I can sit and like I'm ready to get into it, I think that's something that I think more firms need to be able to just be flexible with, like who they hire.
Creatives, right? Like people you're asking them to do a very creative thing and a technical thing, and you want me to switch on a dime for that? Like, you want me to be like, okay, all right, I designed this beautiful thing. Now I have to make the details for it all of a sudden. Like, your brain
crunch numbers all of a sudden.
Crunch numbers, estimate this now.
One thing that I did that I was really proud of myself when I taught was I put a time when the students was able to turn in their work. It was 10 p.m. one full day before the critique. And then it was like, that's it. Pencils down, and now you have a day to just chill.
Right.
Right. Instead of if you did it, you know what I mean. If I allowed it until the last minute, people are going to work till the last minute because we're designers and we care and we want to keep doing it right. So I have kind of helped control that for their health, right? When you say, how do you say the term again? Divergent.
Neurodivergent.
It's interesting that you say that, because I feel like I'm the opposite. Like at the extreme, like I'm hyper-vigilant. Right? So if you're not picking up cues, I suffer from picking up everybody's cues.
That's like, and
right?
It's you know, it can be a spectrum of things, and it's like, but it's to say that what is typical, right? And to say that someone or some, like your firm or whatever, has decided what was typical for you, which is very not, like, that's just, I don't think listens to the human experience. So it's like if you're picking up on everything, that's also great. But that also influences. But it also influences you in a way.
If I see, like, I'll see like a little like grab the mic, like I feel like she wants to talk. If I feel like this, if I feel like a shift, if I see something, and it's like maybe like it didn't receive well, and it's just like information, and I'm just like.
And some people classify that as neurodivergent as well.
I didn't know that. It's the first time I heard the term, so I'm like, but it's like,
I've struggled with that too, and I think that doesn't, especially for me, I do struggle with that, and that not only I've realized like that causes me to slow, like not even appreciate the moment, but then even as a young professional, I'm trying to learn the task at hand. But what doesn't help is that I'm constantly trying to read all the time, everyone within a 2-step radius from me.
Right.
You know, and
like
then
going on a bus is intense, right?
Right, like then because then you're like, okay, But I think it's like, I think for me where it comes from is like constant people pleaser, like, and I hate that term because I feel like it's such a soft, cushy term. Like for me, I want to call it sounds nice. It's like people worship, you know. It's like you think too highly of this person, and then like, so I'm like, oh, they hate me. They think I'm stupid. They think I'm like, look, they're questioning. I see that eyebrows raising, and it's just too much. It's too much. Like, and I wish that I could use it in a way that's helpful, and maybe that's what the interviewer is in me, you know, like asking questions. But then that other time is like, I feel like I've been that aspect. I don't know if this is like at all helpful to conversation, but I feel so much in that realm too, of just like so hyper aware, and I have to shut off that part of my brain. I have to force myself to shut it off so that I can enjoy the moment. and like, you know, that's it.
It's actually kind of funny. I feel like I could be like that.
Yeah.
And it's like a really stupid comment, but like I need to wear glasses to see from far. So I don't like see these things because I don't want to. like I just don't wear my glasses. I see enough detail to like get by. You know what I mean? Like I can't see your eyebrow twitch because I can't see. Like
I do that too.
Blurry.
Yeah, I would like sometimes in my undergrad there was this big hallway that you walk through, and like all the social humanities students are there, and I'm like, I don't know how to not stop and talk to people. But then like not just be like, hey, okay, bye, I gotta go. Like I don't know how to not engage.
Yes.
And I just always find myself going in, oh, you're struggling, let me help. I'm like, I can't even help myself. And I'm constantly just trying to help people, and I'm like, this is not good. So I would take off my glasses because then I don't have the guilt. I literally did not see you. I was not ignoring you. The body language doesn't change. Like people know that she probably didn't see me because otherwise she wouldn't react this way. So it's like, I'm finding other means to take off my glasses that is not taking off my glasses.
Wow. You know, I have to wear, I have to keep like earplugs in my pants, and there's a lot of little strategies that I have to do in order to work with this. And my wife knows things like we'll walk into a place and she's like, this is going to be too much. You know, she's like, are you okay? Like, I kind of don't like it when she says that because I'm like, I feel like something's wrong with me. But then I'm like, no, you're right. I'm not okay. And so like, there's all these like, little things.
There's the word accommodation that I feel like has not been utilized enough when it comes to probably any industry, but specifically with designers. We talk about it in our designs, but we don't talk about it for ourselves. And I feel like that's a word I really wish we would talk about more, because everyone's accommodations are going to be different in order for them to enjoy the space. Like you having earplugs, I wish I had some yesterday. Like I felt like that was, you know, like expo. Exactly.
Costco boat.
Or like we talk about having a nap room in the for all the time. We're like, I don't care. Just pop a tent. I don't care. Just like I just need a place to like, you know, isolate. That could benefit a lot of people. We don't know because we're not talking about what accommodations are really needed for us to become our best like designers.
It's not just to be comfortable. It's like it's also beneficial for them. Like I'll be more productive if I can take a 30-minute nap, please. Like I had a rough night.
The other thing too that I recently learned, like with doing a lot of like kind of like collective work and working really closely with people intensely all the time, you know, and like, you know, sometimes there's frictions that happen and you have to resolve it, and like I do the reading thing. Is everybody okay? Reading, and it's just like, but then after we had this conversation and people like, yeah, I do this because this is how I'm neurodivergent. This is what I have to do to go through life. And therefore, this is why I'm snappy, because otherwise it throws me off and I'm off for weeks. And I'm like, the reading doesn't work. The only thing that works is communication. So that now I'm like, okay, well, I can read and read and read. And I just don't know, because people will be like, no, I need to do emails this way, and I need a response this way. I cannot do this. And I'm like, that's it. Like, thank you for letting me know. Like, I now know.
Yes.
Like, all these coping mechanisms that we use to survive, but then other people will read them in a certain way.
Like, what I do, and I even do it with you guys, and it, like, drives me crazy, is, like I like giving unsolicited advice. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes it hits and sometimes it doesn't. Like, sometimes it's appreciated. But I never feel good afterwards. You know what I mean? Because I'm like, I see, I'm gonna, like, you know? And then I'm like, oh, they didn't ask. And then I'm just saying this is my trend. Who knows, it could be good, it could be bad or whatever. But I'm just saying, then I leave and I'm like, oh, was I? You know what I mean?
No.
I'm gonna leave this right now thinking the same thing.
So if I have and it's bothered you, then sorry. But I don't know. This is what I have.
I think for me, it's just like coping mechanism in order to deal with a lot of social situations. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of my podcasts started off very narrative based because it's me and I can do that, and then having to engage with someone, even like over Zoom or something like that, it's really hard for me to like navigate. But I have to trust the other person, and that's also really hard, right? Like, so I have to trust that, or I would ask you to trust us that if we had a problem with you giving unsolicited advice, that we would let you know. Because I'm not trying to I don't want that to linger in your mind as a question. So it's like I would have to trust that you would not want something like that to linger in my mind, but also you have to ask too. So then it's like, like you saying that lets me know and be like, I want to let you know that I don't mind the unsolicited advice because it's a part of a conversation. It's not like you hunted me down to tell me something, and didn't ask it, and then go away. Like it was a part of something that it came up organically. You know, but but you saying that, so that's why I know. The same way you're saying, if someone tells you like, if you respond to me in this way, it like throws me off. It's like, all right, at least I know now. Yeah. But
well, I think also too, like knowing the motives of you can't ever really know the motives of a person at the end of the day. But I think, like even trying to understand that. Again, like with the context that I'm in all the time, which I keep bringing back to because I feel like it's irrelevant. Because like I have to remember, I feel like I have to remember that like, okay, you said something like and at work, this other person said something to me and that might have rubbed me the wrong way, and now I'm like really insecure about it. I'm like, okay, let's step back for a second. I don't think their motive was to make me feel that way. Right. I think they just suck at communication. or that's just how they communicate, and they think that's the best way to give me information. Yes. So it could be either of those two, and
cultural too.
Yes, 100%. Right, it could be a cultural thing. So it's like, you know what? It could be three of those scenarios. I'm hoping for the best, and I have to train myself to hope for the best. And if it does become like a problem, then I have to be brave enough to communicate that. Yes. Which is the hard part, which I always get anxious about. I'm like, what if I have to tell them that this is like a problem, and it's like, but it's not right now. And I truly, and once I start seeing them in that light, it's like, they're not the enemy anymore. No. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Then it's like, oh, you want the best for me. Like, okay, I try, like, then I have to then switch my mindset and say like, no, we're friends, we're equals, like, or we're coworkers, like, you don't have it out for me. Your motive, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe it's best for me.
And I think this is something I say all the time, and we actually joked about it on the way to San Francisco. It's a whole story. We'll get into it. But but basically, I always think about how every person you meet is literally just a person, and they have so much stuff going on, and they're the way they are for a reason. And you could like it or not, but really, it's all about accepting someone else and just being like, oh, okay, you're like this because of this, and now I understand it. And it's hard to get to that point.
So beautiful. Sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, and the whole story actually is that our hotel is called Sonder, right?
That's the word I was going to use. That's the word you're going to say? I was like, you guys are taking Sonder, and I just learned about that word.
Yes,
and like what it
we
means.
just learned it because we got like the reservation email, and it was like, oh, this is how you check in. And it's like, bypass the lobby and enter your Sonder. And we're all just like,
where did we
Sonder? And I was like, oh, this isn't just the name of the hotel.
Yeah.
And so we looked it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's like, what's it?
Yeah, we looked it up. We looked up the word. And it's like the realization that everyone's life is just as complex as yours. Like even like a stranger you pass on the street, whatever.
Yeah. So profound.
So we saw that and we're like, oh, well, crazy. We still don't get what they mean by like enter your Sonder. But yeah, I was like, that's such a beautiful word because I think of that all the time. I'm like, everyone, Madonna's just a person. We're like just people that like kid that you met that's like yelling, like they're going through something. You know what I mean? So it's just a very like empathetic and accepting viewpoint.
What's interesting about that is like we all, like when you said that, we all innately understood that.
Yeah.
And I also think that everybody in the world innately understands that. right? Yet there's so much conflict and so much misunderstanding and so much miscommunication. And it's like, whoa, how do we get to a point where it's just like, well, you're bleeding in this because of your experiences and what your understanding is, what was accessibility or what was accessible to you, and so on and so forth. And okay, this kind of leads me into when there was going to be ASLA at Nashville. Okay, and I did a post. Sometimes I like to troll my audience. I don't know if you.
Yes, the questions.
I'm just poking the bear, like, let's see where people really at. Anyway, so I posted something, and somebody, this infuriated me, and I said, I think this was the innocent one. This wasn't a troll, but I said, who's going to Nashville, right? Curious, genuinely curious. And somebody said, well, I'm not going to Nashville.
I remember this, yeah.
And somebody said, I'm not going to Nashville because I'm not going to support a red state.
Oh.
Right? Like politically, like they're conservative, right? And I was just infuriated. I was like, this is the problem, right? If you don't like red states or if you don't like that, you need to go. You need to go and you need to talk to people and you need to understand where they're coming from. And also not every single buddy is like politically like that. And even if they are, so what? Why can't we hang? Why can't we talk? Why can't we explore? Why can't we understand we're all going through this human experience and this is right? And vice versa, anyone from any other side of anything, it doesn't even matter. Is there like a D&D beef that you have?
Not a real person. I can always make them see my point of view. That's not a good idea.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like, man, if we would stop and just talk and just hang out, I think we would find that we're all just have all the same concerns and the same, and then the exposure. And I reached out to that person. I was like, yo, we need to talk. Like, give me your phone number. And he's like, I was like, let's talk about this. Why would you say something like that? And then we scheduled a meeting. He didn't show up.
Of course.
And I think he realized like either he leaned into like
the trolling of the
internet. I was gonna say also
like the internet.
The safety behind the screen,
just being like man, like it's just something that really. And I think what we're doing as communicators and as podcasters and having a voice and talking is like we're breaking down barriers. And all of us, we're very vulnerable in this conversation, right? Yeah. And I'm thinking that people that are listening might be like, yeah, like I feel that too. Or they're like, y'all neurotic.
Yeah, exactly. They're like,
That's what the host actually is about.
Either way, we're still gonna do it.
I don't care. They'll be like, yeah, I needed a therapist and that's it.
You know what? This is our creative integrity right here.
Artistic integrity.
They're like, maybe, press room next time.